What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to the final part of the 2024 End of the Year Awards for Smark Out Moment, where we are talking about the AEW Best and Worst of this year. I am your host, as always, Tony Bango, joined as always by Robert DeFelice.
Hey.
And Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
And as we've said before, we have already taken care of the technical awards. We have already done the writing awards. We've also done some of the WWE awards on that front. Go back and check all those episodes out. We are rounding things out now with the Performer Awards on AEW. Then after that, we're going to record the WWE Performer Awards as well. So go back and check out those as you go along here. Tell us what your thoughts are about what we have decided for ours. Tell us what your picks would be for all these things. We do still have a bunch of categories to get into, so that's why we're kind of speeding along here, and we're not going to bother with the plugs and stuff. You guys know all the score with all that stuff, and if you don't, I don't think you care anyway. And, it's still working the same as it did before. We've got, I think, exactly the same categories that we've had the last couple of years or so. So they're all pretty self-explanatory this round too. Any kind of clarification that I need to do, I will say. But yes, best and worst for all of these categories. And let's just get this started, I guess. So AEW only Performer Awards. We start off with the best and the worst managers or valets or whatever kind of supplemental roles like that. Like, it's not general managers, it's not authority figures, and it's not the wrestlers themselves. Like, you know, if they're a tag team partner, you can't really say like Harley Cameron is a manager of Saraya, for instance, for being a part of that team. But there are still quite a bit of options that you can pick from. And I am going to go on my worst for CJ Perry. She wasn't really much of a part of this year, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't stand out as potentially the worst out of this bunch, because there really only are a few that I would say like are successes, a few that are on the more failure side of it, and then a few that really it doesn't matter whatsoever. But the list of like a Karen Jarrett, she wasn't involved in anything that I thought was like great or anything that was like awful. Sanjay Dutt's around and all, but CJ Perry, I mean, this is the year where she had done this whole thing at the end of the year from Andrade and Miro. And where are we at this point with CJ Perry and Miro and Andrade in 2024? It all went haywire. And my other option that I was debating about, and it's just as much of a potential pick, so I almost went with a tie here. I could be persuaded to switch my vote a little bit, is Ric Flair. For obvious reasons that we've already talked about in the other ones.
So I Flair's on my list because, you know, for obvious reasons we've already talked about. But also, I'm not picking him because they didn't stick him with Sting for everything. They just sort of had him come out here and there, and he was part of the last match. But they didn't.
It's hard to kind of say he was necessarily a manager of that, or more just some friend that was hanging around. Like, he invited him, and then he stuck around a little too long and wasn't necessarily invited to the party in the first place, you know?
Yeah, I would also throw in somebody who might be high up on Callum's list, Jack Jameson. Because, you know, he's mostly a manager, but he's also kind of...
I didn't really include him because he does still wrestle, so...
Okay, that's fair. But you would have, I'm sure, if you could have thought of how to do it. But there's... Jacoby Watts is who I'm going to go with.
I don't even know who that is. Who is that? Who's he managing?
Nick Camarado. And this is like an ROH act. And I think it's supposed to be somewhere like a Colonel Robert Parker meets Brother Love with the whole... There's a little bit of religious vibes, culty vibes to it. But it did nothing for Nick. It did nothing for Jacoby. And I don't know, man. Maybe try again next year, but it was lame.
Jacoby Watts. Yeah, I mean, as being somebody who doesn't watch ROH, that shouldn't be too surprising for me, but I don't think I've seen a single second of this person. Is he not also a wrestler, though? It looks like he is. Or is he just
He has wrestled tag match. He did wrestle tag matches with Nick
He wrestled tag matches, but they were short. I would consider him more of a manager.
Most tag matches were kind of him just standing on the apron coaching Nick rather than actually getting involved too much himself.
Yeah, so I'm considering him a manager for this one. Also, Alex Abrahantes, but not for any fault of his own, but he took a step down this year. And it seems like he just sort of especially with Penta and Phoenix gone, he just sort of comes around Komandar like, yay, I'm here. Okay, see ya.
So the ones that I have on the negative side of things, mainly the people that you guys mentioned. I did put Camille in there. Because again, I don't think that she's done a great job. I know she's a wrestler as well, so I probably won't end up going with her for that reason. But she mainly portrayed the role of just Mercedes Moné's enforcer. She only had like a handful of matches anyway, so. But out of the three core choices, which are Ric Flair, Karen Jarrett, and CJ Perry, like naturally I would want to go for Ric Flair just because it's Ric Flair. But as Rob points out, he didn't have any kind of net negative on the actual quality of the product and Sting's story, and he wasn't a detriment to Sting's story in the grand scheme of things outside of just his reputation being attached to it. But yeah, I'd probably go with CJ Perry over Karen Jarrett because just the whole thing involving Miro and Andrade, I know that was like back end of last year going into early this year, but I just think that overall she was a net negative on the actual quality of stuff that was going on.
I just want to be clear, they never appeared again, right? After
World's End.
Yeah, okay,
yeah, both Miro
crazy.
and CJ Perry pretty much were gone at that point, and Andrade as well.
Crazy.
So all three people in that one match, like pretty much did nothing in 2024. So
that's
not for AEW anyway.
That's a great transition into the year where it's like I'm gonna be this great manager of
I want to be the Paul Heyman of women, I'm back with Miro, and I'm gonna get him to be a killer again, and we're gone, and also we're real life divorced. hey.
So if it wasn't necessarily like I can't really count that if they weren't a part of the year, then I'd go with my Ric Flair pick. It's it's a 50-50 between the two of them. Really, as long as you pick something on that front, who really cares? They're the bad ones anyway. But there are some good ones. And there are two in particular that I really was kind of going back and forth between, but there's one that does take the cake more. My runner-up is Prince Nana. And the only reason why I didn't pick him is because Don Callis is around. And Don Callis is not only better on the mic, but I think that he's an overall more effective character. I like Prince Nana with Swerve Strickland, and I'm glad that is, like a group that hasn't split yet. And I almost went with MVP already on this, which is like
him myself.
It's like that's very soon, but hey, I went with Shelton Benjamin for one of my other picks, and he just popped up around the same time. So, you can kind of say that he's already good enough, but I'm gonna go Don Callis for the longevity of it too.
I'm not going Don Callis because it's gotten better. It took a long time though, because the lingering effects of Jericho inserting himself into the Omega Callis story, and then Omega getting hurt really hurt the Don Callis family. So I'm not gonna go with him, even though I think he does do solid work. Mark Sterling deserves a shout because I think he's a great, fun wrestling manager. Like, he's probably your prototypical wrestling manager, and his guys aren't pushed towards the top, but he's a lot of fun when he is on screen. I think Stokely Hathaway deserves a shout. He brought out some good stuff in Statlander. It was a shame to see that pairing go south, and they just sort of went their separate ways. But, and I'm going to be honest, this might be a little some of a cop out because she hasn't done too much. But I think that this person's just elevated her game completely, and that's Marina Shafir as the bodyguard of Jon Moxley and just this silent assassin for the Death Riders. I've really enjoyed Marina Shafir, and that's the first time I could ever say those words. So I'm gonna give her flowers in case this is the only year to do so, and say Marina Shafir is probably my Valet of the year.
Has she wrestled in the past few months?
Has she wrestled for AEW? I'm not sure.
No, I don't think she's wrestled for AEW for a while.
Yeah, I would count her then.
So my ones were kind of, again, same people that have been mentioned as you'd expect, but I narrowed down to 4 choices, which were Don Callis, Prince Nana, MVP, and Stokely Hathaway. I'll leave off MVP because he's it is a bit too recent, but I think that all signs are pointing toward if they continue at the current trajectory that they're going on, then this will be a phenomenal 2025 for him. He'll be definitely one of the front runners for that. Stokely did great work with Chris Statlander, but again, that was unfortunately short-lived, and he hasn't really done much since because they've just been having him meander around Private Party, but that didn't go anywhere, and now he's seemingly without anyone to manage, and there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of clamour for him to manage anyone else at this point. So between Don Callis and Prince Nana, I think I will just go with Prince Nana because I think that his presence has added a lot to the Swerve act, and that whole segment with the Hurt Business at Wrestle Dream, where just him being talked to about MVP and how Swerve talks about the relationship between those two, and I just think that it added a lot of weight to that segment, and so he adds a lot of personality and character to Swerve, and is a big part of Swerve's act. So yeah, I'll give it to Prince Nana.
Now switching over to the commentators of the year, best and worst, of course, same as any other category. There are a few, and I might be forgetting things the way that I am with, pretty much anything else. It's so impossibly hard to keep track of all this stuff, especially if you don't watch Ring of Honor, and then that's another whole element of it, But when it comes to this person is technically on the roster and this person isn't, or that person just did a guest spot, that person's actually signed, all these other kind of things, it's a little bit easier to figure out the commentators, but even then, I'm not watching ROH, so I know that Ian Riccaboni is on there, Caprice Coleman, etc. But maybe there's people that I am actually not realizing or been a part of this mix or something. I'm still across the board just going to go with what I keep going with, though. I think I've done this almost every single year. My best is Excalibur, and my worst is Jim Ross. I don't like Jim Ross coming out there and basically not saying anything when he's even on there for just one match. And when he does, he says things that are pretty much pointless. He doesn't contribute much to it. They'll have a match and it'll be Claudio against, say, I don't know, Alex Reynolds, and he'll be like, wow, Cesaro's a tough guy. And you're like, damn it, Jim. I get it, but at the same time, can you maybe have a little bit more excitement? Can you maybe bring something to the table that Excalibur and Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness and Matt Menard and all aren't doing a little bit better? Taz is fun. He's got some excitement to him. JR just seems like he's there just to collect a paycheck and then leave. And it's really hurt his legacy for me. Excalibur's great, though. This dude holds down the fort every single episode. He runs down things with pinpoint precision. He's funny.
Excalibur is easily the best PWG import. into this era, and I'm including the Bucks because Excalibur has been able to do exactly what he was doing and raise his stock in the process. And I will give a shout out to Ian Riccaboni. I wish he would just have done some more of the AEW side of things because I think he's one of the best play-by-plays in general. My pick for worst, he hasn't done anything this year, but since he was still technically employed this year, I'm tempted to say Kevin Kelly because the whole mess is just a mess and terrible. But my worst is going to be Chris Jericho because he's still doing commentary on Rampage, and I can get away with that. And Jericho on commentary was fun at the start of the pandemic. We are nearly 5 years removed from that, and I don't want him on commentary.
He really is still doing that on Rampage? I haven't watched an episode of Rampage, I think, this entire year.
3, and he's been there. I don't know if that's just because it happens to bleed into the Ring of Honor stuff, but he's been there, so I'm counting it.
So, out of the negative choices, I think it comes down to either Jim Ross or Kevin Kelly. I kind of in the situation where I always was a bit of a apologist for Jim Ross, but I think this year in particular, he's just so surly and he almost crosses the line of kayfabe too much and question you almost see him finding out oh, how can I undermine what's happening in front of me right now in his comments. So so that's obviously a difficult thing. But Kevin Kelly was bad at his job to the point where he ended up getting fired for saying that Ian Riccaboni was libeling him or anything along those lines, and trying to sabotage his career. And so now he's suing AEW. So it's whether you think the worst is someone who's now outright suing the company for essentially getting sour grapes about doing bad at his job, or someone who just is a legend of the game but is so far past his peak and continues to any time that he does do commentary actively hurts the quality. So I'd probably go.
Go ahead.
I'm going to go with Kevin Kelly just because Tony's already done the Jim Ross one, so I might as well give him a negative one as well.
And I'm glad that you went with Kevin Kelly because maybe it's because, look, I am known to just sometimes, just because I'm focusing on work and stuff, mute the shows sometimes. But I haven't heard anything from Jim that wasn't as egregiously bad as it was when he first signed, and we thought, oh my God, Jim Ross is going to be on commentary and it's going to be great. So maybe I'm just giving him a pass because I'm numb to it, but I haven't felt like he was extra surly this year.
I don't remember any particular calls that he made that would have been exceedingly bad, but every time that he is on, I feel like the commentary dips, and there already are 2 to 3 people that tend to be on the table as it is. They usually keep Excalibur. It's usually Tony Schiavone. Maybe Taz is around, not lately, but they swap in Nigel or Matt Menard or somebody, and they have a rhythm, and then Jim Ross will just kind of cut in and just be say Excalibur and Tony Schiavone are sitting there going wow, Anna Jay really is coming into her own lately or something like that. And then Jim Russell just kind of, after they say it and start moving on to another topic, he'll be she's doing great. And then they take a couple seconds and then they're all right, so anyway, and it kind of, I don't know, it gives me this vibe of I don't want to sound too mean, but when you go all right, Grandpa, okay, anyway. And then when you hear the comments that he makes on his podcast and stuff, and it's just pretty much complaining about the product all the time is the stuff that I keep seeing. I just don't get a sense that he wants to be there. I think he wants to work, but he doesn't want to work there.
Yeah.
Now, as I say, in terms of the best one now, unless you have something else to add about
No.
Jim Rossy. In terms of my best ones, there's plenty of options. Like Ian Riccaboni is mentioned. Taz is always fun. Matt Menard's really good, and I think
Surprisingly, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of his things have been associated with like doing commentary for Danny Garcia matches, but I think overall he adds a lot of energy into the commentary. Don Callis can be fun when he's on commentary as well, but the main two are Excalibur and Nigel McGuinness, and because Excalibur's already given the award, and from you guys, and quite like deservedly so, I still think that Nigel McGuinness is the best. He's one of, if not the best, color commentator in the world, and the stuff that he would throw in about Bryan Danielson, the way that he approaches things with like Mariah May as well, and like he's just he's funny, he's cutting, but he's also got that very clear technical acumen of knowing what the things going on during the matches to really add a lot of weight to what Excalibur says. Because Excalibur knows all the moves, he knows all he's doing. He could do it on his own if he needed to, but when he's with Nigel, then it just adds a bit. And or when Tony Schiavone's with Nigel, it just adds a little bit more weight to what's being said. So yeah, big fan of Nigel.
Nigel had my favorite call of the year with Bryan Danielson can't do anything right. He went vegan, couldn't stop eating brie, and and he let it out there. That was easily the line of the year. But I think Excalibur just deserves the flowers for, carrying the commentary booth.
That was a great line. Yeah.
He can't stop eating brie.
Yeah. I wonder if that was one of those things that, like, obviously, because like Danielson's not able to listen to that during the commentary, but if somebody told him backstage or something, and then if he was just kind of like, "Wait, what did you say?"
I'm sure he loved it. Like,
yeah, he probably thought it was so fucking riot. Yeah. Let's switch over to the best and the worst newcomer. Again, this is very difficult to track because so many people just pop up in WWE is hard to track as it is. WWE is infinitely easier than AEW when it comes to like new signings and people that are officially a part of the company. At least WWE has a relatively up-to-date superstars page where you can be like, okay, well, if they're on the page, we know for a fact that they're signed. AEW is like, well, we signed them, but we only signed them to a multiple appearance per year contract for Ring of Honor, but we're going to actually have them show up on AEW. And it's like, all right, well, then goddamn. So it's really hard to keep track of who is officially a part of the company when, who's even a part of it now, outside of pretty obvious ones. Like, yeah, of course, Brian Cage is a part of the roster. And then you take somebody that's like an Erica Lee, and it's like, did they sign her at any point? Or did they not? And she just popped up a couple times. I don't know. But at least from what I'm aware of, the people that were newcomers this year, to give a quick rundown to anybody that's curious and want to leave their comments below. In alphabetical order from the men's division would be the Beast Mortos, Bobby Lashley, Brian Keefe, Hologram, Kazuchika Okada, Ricochet, Truth Magnum, Turbo Floyd, Will Ospreay, and Zach Knight.
And you didn't say Shelton Benjamin.
Do I not have... I don't have Shelton Benjamin on that list. That's an oversight. Wow. Shelton Benjamin needs to be added to the roster page. And now he is added to the roster page. See, this is so hard for me to keep track of these things. And Shelton Benjamin is on there. So thank you for calling me out on that one. And for anybody that notices anything, by the way, on this, like, definitely let me know, because this is so difficult for me to do throughout the year for the tag team list or, whatever it might be. And then on the women's side, maybe I'm forgetting some people there too, but I only have down Deonna Purrazzo, potentially Erica Lee, Camille, Mercedes Moné, and I believe that that's it. Ring of Honor, who the fuck knows?
I would say NXM Collection.
Are they officially signed?
They are. They're definitely officially signed.
So I got to add them to the roster pages then too.
I mean, if they're not, they're on enough of the mainline programming that I don't care.
That's true. I mean, at that point, there is a part of me that kind of just wants to not even have that page anymore and just be like, you know what, they're making it too difficult. Screw you guys. But then again, I use the resource too much for myself even. So, Mason Madden and Mansoor. Then you add them to the mix too. Any other women that I'm forgetting?
Not that I can recall off the
Yeah,
top of my
I
head
don't
how
think
the ones
so.
you mentioned.
Really hard to keep track of that though, but I think that might be, at least if there is anybody else, then maybe they didn't make that big of a splash, and maybe we don't need to bother to talk about them at all. But they're highs and lows across the board on that front, and if there is somebody else that really, really sucked, then hey, leave that comment below and we could be like, oh yeah, they were terrible.
You're beating around the bush. Are you picking Mercedes for your worst or not?
I'm not.
Okay.
But she was one of my honorable mentions. Because I had 3 down for that. I had Mercedes Moné because of the level of hype and like importance and value that she's supposed to have versus how I actually am enjoying it, which is not much at all. But I can't still give her that over either Camille or Zach Knight. Because Camille was even worse than Mercedes. It's to a point now where, like, yeah, if I were, like, if Tony Khan hired me today, would I try to pitch firing Mercedes and getting rid of her? No. I would just be like, you need to change a lot of these things. You can't keep doing the same character, blah, 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 blah. Camille, though, I would honestly be like, look, maybe we should just let her go and she can go to NXT and see what they can do there. And then Zach Knight, I'd be like, is it worth hiring somebody just to keep Saraya happy?
I'm sure they're not. Look, I don't know, obviously. The next comment I'm about is speculatory, but I can't imagine that Zach Knight is breaking the bank.
I mean, I don't know how much he's making, but if you look at, like, if he's making any money outside of like a per appearance deal, and who knows what you get paid on. We don't know any of the information when it comes to the per appearance deals and stuff. But I'm looking at the cage match list right now. He wrestled 5 times for AEW this year. 4 of those were dark matches. I don't even know who 2 of the people are that he fought in those. Che Cabrera and Oron West. He beat Colt Cabana, John Cruz, aka Serpentico. And the only time he was on TV this entire year was April 10th when he beat Angelo Parker on Rampage.
Yeah, that was a not so great story with the
whole Ruby Soho thing.
The Ruby and Saraya and all that.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know. Do I go Camille or do I go Zach Knight? Really flip a coin. Camille should have done much better, and that's disappointing. Zach Knight, I don't know if he's ever been intended to really be much of a focal point, and if he is, then that's even bigger a problem. But even still, I don't know why he's part of the roster.
So I'm not gonna waste too much time here. It's Camille. Like, I could care less about Zach Knight. He's not hurting anybody. He's not really doing much damage to AEW. They use him when they use Saraya. That's fine. Sure, he always wanted to be signed. I'm glad he achieved that dream. Camille, I had really, really, really high hopes for. And regardless of how or why, it's just been a miserable run. And this has to be my personal biggest disappointment signing for AEW this year. It's Camille.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to waste too much time as well on top of that by saying, yeah, Camille is the worst newcomer. I just think that she's coming across because she got, in the few matches that she's had, I feel like she's gotten like gassed really quickly. And I think it's been quite evident that she doesn't seem to be in ring shape, or at least not up to the pace that you'd expect in AEW. And you need to, and I'd say eventually with AEW, you can be one of these characters that's just like beats people in a couple of minutes, like a Wardlow or someone of that ilk for a while. But eventually, you have to have long matches to be able to engage people for a while. And Camille's, again, it's a short like a window to see into that, but she isn't giving any real indications that she'll be able to handle that step up. And yeah, the partnership with Mercedes Moné hasn't gone well, and they've separated now, and she's potentially seemingly out injured, but also a lot of speculation going around about that saying, they just did the angle because they're just going to write her off TV in general. I've already said that I just don't think that Camille will be back in AEW anytime soon, or if not for a while, and doing something completely removed from the Mercedes Moné story. So I guess we'll have to wait and see, but it might be one of the shortest and least illustrious stints in AEW's history, really. But yeah, the honorable mentions were like Zack Knight, like Tony mentioned, of course, like 'cause he hasn't done anything. Mercedes Moné, because she's fallen well below expectations, both from a booking standpoint and just her own performances. And Deonna Purrazzo, pretty much for a similar story for that one as well. Like someone that came in with a lot of not as much there's certainly nowhere near as much fanfare as Mercedes Moné, but has a reputation behind her, and just has is now pretty much just confined to Rampage with her team with Ty Valkyrie.
Also, not this year's signing, but another name that I think you could have applied the same words to last year, Ty Valkyrie. I still see more positives come from them in the future, and I hope I'm not wrong, but nobody was as big of a disappointment as Camille.
Thankfully, we had some positives, though. I mentioned, a rundown of some people earlier, and I had a bunch of different people that I could have picked from, and even forgot about Shelton Benjamin, so now I had to add him down to another one of my potential picks for that, but I'm not going to go Shelton Benjamin. Beast Mortos, a lot of fun this year. He's had some great matches. He's been a really reliable guy to just throw into the mix with almost anybody and do a damn good job. We haven't seen much of Bobby Lashley yet, but he could prove to be a pretty solid pick. Not going to go with him.
He's Bobby Lashley. What do you need to know?
Right. I mean, I highly doubt that he's going to be performing anything all that much differently than what we've seen before. But if anything, maybe he'll do better even than when he was in WWE. I wish I could go with Kazuchika Okada, but I gotta go Will Ospreay. I mean, this is Ospreay's year in so many different ways. It was like a Swerve year, a portion of it. It was a Danielson year. It's a Moxley year, whatever. But even without being the world champion, Ospreay has just completely commanded 2024 across the board for me. You're going to hear his name a lot on the rest of this positive list.
Yeah, I was a bit conflicted with Ospreay because I know he technically signed last year, but he actually got his official start this year, so he's a solid pick for the best signing and might be the name I go with at the end here. But I do want to throw out one name who's really come into her own that we didn't mention already is Queen Aminata, signed this year. Fantastic performer.
In 2023?
She signed in January.
I guess I just assumed that she was a part of the... God damn it, they need to announce these things.
They need to be more clear. But Brian Keith,
he's been fun.
The Swerve pairing with Jericho, but he's still a great wrestler, and he's coming into his own as a character with the whole "you better respect Chris Jericho." One of the few highlights of that gimmick. So I come down to it's either Will Ospreay or it's Shelton Benjamin, just because I'm so happy he's being treated like the star that he should be. And I think Tony already gave the nod to Ospreay. We all know how great he is. We're going to sing his praises more later on. I'm going to go Shelton Benjamin.
So my four, contenders for best newcomer were Beast Mortos, because he just has consistently great matches and he's the perfect base for pretty much AEW's entire catalogue of luchador stars. And speaking of which, Hologram was another contender as well, because he's just been he's had some really fun matches, been presented well, been booked strong. And yeah, he's now currently out injured for whatever reason. But yeah, it's a good start by him, and it's clearly he's like Tony Khan's pet project or one of his pet projects. So it's clear that he's going to be treated well when he comes back. Obviously, just for blowing out expectations, I think coming in because everyone thought, okay, it's going to be a solid hand, but I don't think people were expecting this quality, this consistently, this early on in this run, and perfect place for him to be in like the Continental Classic, and he's doing great stuff. But yeah, it's obviously Will Ospreay. Like he had pretty much all of the best matches this year, probably the top 4 or 5 matches of the year all involved Will Ospreay at some point. He cut up great promos, he involved in good stories, and got the crowd super invested. Yeah, he is definitely like the shining star of the newcomers this year.
It's curious who is going to be signed at the very end of this year, or sometime at 2025 that we end up having on our list, because there's a little bit of discussion that maybe Matt Cardona could end up signing a contract, or maybe already has.
I think he's got. I think if they release a Ring of Honor shirt for him, I think he's pen to paper in some respect.
Now, for the context of anybody that's listening to this after ROH Final Battle, we're recording this on the 18th of December. Technically, it's like 3:45 p.m., just in case that matters when it comes to it's Wednesday, it's before Dynamite, that kind of thing. So for all we know, maybe by the time that this gets published, he's already said, like, I'm officially a part of Ring of Honor now, and I'm the champion, or anything that goes along with that front. Even if that would be the case, I don't think that we would retroactively be like, oh, and he was the best new signing of this entire year over Will Ospreay anyway. And when it's that close to the end of the year, I basically treat it as like, it doesn't really count. They're essentially a signing for 2025. So maybe we'll see if that plays out for next year, and kind of ends up being on that front. Hopefully we don't have a whole lot of options of negative newcomers next year. And hopefully we have more of an actual understanding of who the hell is in this roster by the time that we do this next year. And that applies to the tag team division too. The stables and the factions and the tag teams are as haywire and crazy as you could possibly get in ROH and in AEW. People are a part of multiple groups. The groups change names. Like the varsity athletes became the premier athletes, and they cross over with different things. There was an Outcasts group this year, then they stopped being them, and I don't even know if they're even like associated with each other anymore. Who's doing what? Does anybody know who's sleeping with who? I want to know why that came in my mind. So I am sure, I'm 100% positive, I am missing at least a dozen tag teams, if not more. And that's just even when it comes to like the names that I should probably be aware of. But if you go to smarkoutmoment.com, you'll see the tracker of like teams that I could keep a head about throughout the entire year. And same as the other things, if anybody knows anything different, let me know and I'll adjust the pages and stuff. But I have a couple to write down on the worst that I was able to remember, or at least give proper criticism to. I don't want to give this to the teams that I'm not super familiar with, like Beef and JD Drake, but it just seems like a stupid group that, like, okay, I get it, same with like the Premier Athletes and the Spanish Announce Project. Like, they're all part of Ring of Honor, and I don't watch it, so I can't really crap on them too much. But I was so tempted to give this to Big Boom AJ and the Rizzler and everything, because I'm like, oh, I have an opportunity here to
put that for Worst Newcomer.
Oh, there you go. Or worst Valet manager.
Not the Rizzler, please.
Maybe I could give the Rizzler the worst like signature catchphrase.
God.
Keep up the trend. Keep up the trend of like, screw those kids. They get the worst awards in this 15-year thing. But obviously, I'm not going to go on that front. That doesn't really count. Big Bill and Ricky Starks started off the year and then they dissipated. So I don't know if I really count that as anything to really crap on. So I kind of went between these three, and your mileage may vary on which one you should prioritize, but Conglomeration to me is one of the worst, and it sucks to say that because I like everybody that's involved in it. I just don't like this grouping, and I don't like the synergy of everything. We already talked about that a little bit.
You heard it here first, Tony. Tony Mango doesn't like conglomerating.
I think I would like Conglomo from Rocco better.
Good reference.
But I still have to pick one of these other two over them. Dalton Castle and the Boys. Or if you go with like the strictly AEW, wow, this team really went to shit this year. Best Friends.
Well, they really did though, because
I just wrote up something that hopefully it'll be a part of post soon for What Culture of like the biggest losers of the year. And I put Best Friends on there because it's Chuck Taylor, Trent Beretta, Orange Cassidy, and then they have their allies and like Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale kind of as part of the, tangential best friends of some kind. What happened this year with them? They, Chuck spent the beginning of the year basically injured. And when he comes back, it's like, I have to retire and I'm going to lose the parking lot brawl with Trent, who turned on those two, lost a bunch of matches to Orange Cassidy, starts to turn as a part of the Don Callis family, and then has to go away for an injury. And then Orange Cassidy also gets turned on by Chris Statlander, who also turns on Willow Nightingale. And then Chris Statlander doesn't win anything that's worthwhile. So it was like, wow, you kind of did that for no reason. And Willow's still hanging around doing some good stuff and whatever. And Orange Cassidy's always doing some great stuff. But like, this was the end of Best Friends this year. And storyline wise, I'm sure a lot of that would have played out differently if they wouldn't have had these injuries and all. And that's something to factor in too. But yeah, I kind of think that maybe that's the worst faction of the year in that front. If you go worst as far as like the least entertaining and all for me, and you don't throw out names like the Workhorsemen or were the Wingmen a thing this year? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't think the Wingmen have been a thing for like 3 years.
I don't know. I had Peter Avalon and Ryan Nemeth down.
Definitely not Ryan Nemeth, sir.
Yeah, that's again like fuck them for making this so hard. But like the Outcast, really, that stuff. Well, I wasn't a fan of that. But the Hardy Boys is also on this list too. They're gone, so don't have to really keep that apart. But actually, were they still part of the private party thing this year, or was that ended in 2023?
That might have ended in 23.
Yeah, it's there are definitely some options that I'm just not super into.
I mean, on the one hand, I understand your concerns with the Hardy Boys, but at the same time, they're gone. They're doing something better now. So that's probably not the worst. I'm going to keep this short. It's the Acclaimed. I'm ready for this hack to go away. They didn't go away. They should go away. And it's a shame.
So my list, there's a few groups here. So I have both the Acclaimed and the Bang Bang Scissor Gang. That's kind of close there. Obviously, I've said my pieces about the Acclaimed and Max Caster in particular over and over again, and the Bang Bang Scissor Gang was just a weird way of doing that as well. So just an extension of the Acclaimed. So, both those acts have been bad. But then you have the Undisputed Kingdom.
Yeah, that could be mentioned for sure.
Yeah, that group's been was snake bit from the start and just hasn't worked well at all, with like Wardlow disappearing, Taven and Bennett really not doing much of anything at all. And Cole only just coming back, and realistically, it's not really the Undisputed Kingdom anymore. So, got the Hardys there as well, of course, because they were very poor at the end of the run. Their matches weren't good. They were confined to Rampage for the most part. And I've got the learning tree because I don't like the whole reimagining of this whole Jericho Appreciation Society stuff. So it's pretty much that and more sports entertainment bullshit. So I get rid of it. But the worst, as you probably would tell after my other things in other parts of the awards, is the Iron Savages. Just they're just pure irritant. Like they're just go away heat with me. Just I don't think they add anything to the product that you wouldn't get by just hiring 3 random jobbers to do the job for them. But you've got a heel trios tag team that can just do jobs to people, and that's the premier athletes. They're your go-to ones. Like they'll have a good match and they'll lose, and that's what they're there to be for. So you don't need the Iron Savages on top of that.
When it comes to this, the groups that are going into 2025. I already have my list going up for like the beginning of the year. January 1st, all the typical posts are going to publish and all. I have a group of, let me see, how many people do I have on this? From what I can track, there's about 30 names of teams. If you kind of include like the Young Bucks and the Elite and people that aren't really necessarily still hanging around, but they kind of are. I don't know even like what we have in like ROH right now and stuff too, but I also wanted to shout out like the Vendetta is another team that I just don't think really makes a whole lot of sense. And I was not impressed with a lot of other people like the Righteous to begin with. I wasn't impressed with what we've seen from LFI this year. In the grand scheme of things, I didn't know that JF Jarrett and Jay Lethal and Saddam Singh or whatever were apparently they call themselves just Heat.
It makes sense considering like they're just like pure heel nature, but obviously that's changed now that Jarrett turned babyface.
Yeah,
midway through the year, so
that good heel Heat group of babyfaces. Yeah, I mean, I could toss a couple of other ones out there that I'm not super duper impressed with, and then I can not really have a whole lot that I would say on the positive side of things, though. I did at one point have the learning tree down as one of my best, but that's wavered a lot, so I can't continue to pick them. I liked a portion of what that was before we got into like the Orange Cassidy feud. And then at that point, I was, still just kind of meh. MXM Collection is a lot of fun. I don't think I can necessarily pick them, though. Hurt Syndicate already is fun, and I'm enjoying what they have going on and all. I think I kind of have to go with the Don Callis family, even though they haven't been particularly great the entire year. They've just been picking up steam in the past few months a little bit, but I like the group. I think that they are turning things around quite a bit. I think it's a good idea to put Brian Cage and Lance Archer in there. Takeshita's got a championship now. Fletcher's doing better than ever. The people that were a part of that before, like Hobbs, he wasn't around for this whole year up until when he popped back up and then not a part of it anymore. The Will Ospreay elements of this, when he was a part and it was kind of 50-50 and all, I like that. Now that he's out of the mix, that makes sense. So it's not like it really hurt the group whatsoever. It's just now that they're feuding with him, and that works too. So I think I got to go Don Kyle's family.
Yeah, so I had a few good ones listed. Don Callis family is definitely a big option because they definitely turn things around towards the second half of the year with like Fletcher's ascension, having on and off, having Ospreay involved, but primarily just him being out of it. But then with Archer and Cage and Takeshita. It's been a good year for the group as a whole, but then not really like as a collective, just individuals within that collective really. So that kind of hurts it a little bit for me. Hurt Syndicate, again, it's new, it's early on, but again, all signs are positive at this stage. I've kind of got the BCC / the Death Riders, because I think that I think the group is like a strong group, and the BCC was always presented as strong, and they won the trios titles some point earlier this year, and now with Pac involved with Death Riders, but let's say it's a good group that's presented strongly, and obviously the patriarchy is always does well and is a fun act throughout the year. But the two ones that I'm most debating over for giving it is the Young Bucks, because I know everyone says that yes, it was a weaker year for them. People weren't fan of the characters and the Elite storyline. I absolutely, completely agree with a lot of that. But they also had the best tag team matches of this year, and were consistently in great matches. The Sting, Darby Allin, Ospreay and Fletcher, the triple threat with FTR and Klein, the two matches with Private Party. Like, when the time came to just, have a match for the tag titles or just have a straight up like tag team match, there's no one, there are few teams more dependable than the Young Bucks to have great matches. But the one I'm going to go for is the Conglomeration. I love this group. I love the fact that I don't care about the fact that like it's all just thrown together. That's the whole point of the Conglomeration. It's just a group of people that have just been brought together, just the fact that they're just friends and they like hanging out with each other. And they're just like, just a cool little group that has really fun trios matches when they're put, like, usually with Kyle O'Reilly and Briscoe and Cassidy when they're together. Obviously, when you throw in Tomohiro Ishii occasionally as well, and having Nightingale being on the side of that as well. I think it's a fun, quirky group that I'm kind of like, just because it's a group of friends just hanging out despite their differences.
Rob, who do you have for your best?
I think
do we not have Rob on here right now?
Yeah, I think he said it put in the chat that he was like going to be right back, and
I am
clearly
right back.
he's not. Oh yeah, there we go.
Perfect timing. Hopefully you weren't waiting too long.
No,
it's been 12 and a half minutes.
Yeah, I believe that. So which one were we doing? Jog my memory.
Best tag team or stable.
Oh, best tag team or stable. Okay, so the Young Bucks are always going to be up for best tag team because they are still great. They're not as great as they were with the old gimmick to me, but that's to me. I like the Conglomeration. I know you don't. I like the Undisputed Kingdom still, even though it was a major flop. Still like the guys. But I think, gun to my head, I'm probably going to go Young Bucks still had the best tag team run in AEW.
So now we start getting into more individual categories. We've got the best and the worst heel of the year, and good people on the heel side, some people that I can throw my honorable mentions and kind of crap on the worst side. The best and the worst heel and best and the worst babyface categories are always a little bit up for interpretation when it comes to, do you classify somebody as like a bad heel because in your mind they fail to get the heat and the crowd just doesn't boo them enough? Or are you giving them that award of the worst because they're the type of person who you're just like, I really don't fucking like this heel, and the last thing I want to do is to have them try to get me to boo them because I just don't care. Or, hey, they're just not fun as a heel. There are a couple different interpretations like that. Same when it comes to best. Is this the person that got you to hate them the most? And you're like, oh, I actually was annoyed at this person. What a great heel. Or are you just like, that's such a fun villain? Like, I love the Joker. The Joker is my favorite villain of all time in any kind of media. At the same time, do you want to like the villain? It's kind of that kind of a thing. So you can play with it however you want. I leave it up to interpretations there. But here are my options when it comes to the worst heels, because I tend to go more on the front of it's supposed to be somebody that I'm interested in as a villain, but I actually don't care, rather than somebody that I'm like, you don't get me to boo you, that kind of front. So I've got a list of a cop-out answer of Aaron Solo and the miscellaneous do-nothing jobbers. Throw anybody in the mix there that's supposed to be a heel that I can't even remember, and you can, talk about them on that front. House of Black, when they're heels, if you want to talk about people that I should be hating and I don't, that's an option, because if they go out there and they do something cool, they're just cool. If they go out there and I'm supposed to hate them, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've been like, oh, boo, whatever. So that's kind of my interpretation on that front. I'm not liking the Action Andretti and Leo Rush heel separation from Top Flight. I mentioned LFI. Don't really do anything for me. I've already talked about Saraya. And Chris Jericho, when it works, it works. I like him, which I shouldn't. And when it doesn't work, I'm bored and I hate it. So that's a very strong contender. And I would be my pick if it wasn't for Mercedes Moné.
For all the reasons you said.
For all the reasons I said before. I mean, I don't want to, continue to repeat the same things, but Mercedes.
What if you repeated CEO? CE.
That alone, it's a good reason for me to say worst heel. If that's supposed to get heat from me, from being like, she's getting on my nerves because she's so, she's got a big head about herself, it kind of just makes me think that about the performer, and I shouldn't be thinking it that way.
Yeah. Mercedes is not my worst heel. Again, I don't really want to beat around the bush. My worst heel is Chris Jericho. It's annoying. It's I hate it because, look, Jericho was one of my favorite wrestlers, is still top 4 of all time for me in terms of personal favorites. But this year, man, was the year that I'm just like, go away. Go away for a little while at least. Just make people miss you, maybe. And I'm tired of him.
Yeah, so my options, I had limited it to like a few because there's a lot of people that I've mentioned beforehand that like I could put into it, but I wanted to just classify just a few people in particular. Like Iron Savages, they're just annoying and they're heels, so I'll put them in there, but I don't think they're the worst heels, they're just the worst acts. So Wardlow and Roderick Strong, just because the Roderick Strong thing is so annoying, and Wardlow because I think that I don't know if it doesn't really work as like either heel or babyface beyond the random bodyguard thing. And I think that this year when he came back into that role, it just felt like defaulting to the mean, and he didn't like excel in that role. It was just like a rehash that didn't work out well. My runner-up will probably be Jack Perry because I just don't. He just comes across so nonchalant and not very into what he's doing, and maybe that's part of the character, like the scapegoat thing, where he's like feels very like down on himself a lot. It's very meek in what he says, but it just doesn't make up for like a good like hateable heel. He's just kind of more you're more ambivalent towards him than I think outright not liking him. But I'm going to agree with Rob that I think the worst is Chris Jericho. Just primarily because, like, with the stuff that he says with, like, the high guys and the thanks guys, like, he's doing it to get, like, crowd pops rather than draw heel heat. And I think he's just one of those people, because he's been there for so long and he's just trying to do things now, and he's primarily, like, feels like he's there to entertain himself, which in some ways, like, you can argue, like, good for him. He's kind of earned that right after the long career that he's had, but it's just a case of like, you're supposed to be like this detestable character, why are you doing things like doing like funny catchphrases and stuff along those lines? So yeah, I think that he's ineffective as a heel, and also like just is long in the tooth in terms of his run of AEW.
Again, if it wasn't for Mercedes, Chris Jericho would have been my pick, and it would have been a trifecta here. For the same reasons, But on the best heel side of things, I wish I could put MJF down here, man. I do that almost every year, but I can't this year. That's very disappointing. I thought he was going to come back.
Almost on my worst, I'll say that. He's another one. I'm over it, especially that earlier this year when he did the US thing. I'm good.
He's the greatest AEW American champion of all time.
He's also the only.
Yeah. At the beginning of the year, I wrote MJF down on the list because I just assumed that he would end up being that. And that's why I ended up having to change that to be like, no, I can't. But Adam Page, very strong contender. It wouldn't surprise me if either of you guys picked him for the best heel this year, too.
I'm not going to classify him as a heel because I've never seen a heel that is so beloved in my life.
I haven't picked him either. I think that he falls into... He's very much anti-hero territory right now, in particular. I think that burning down a guy's house is definitely one of the most heelish things you can probably do.
Yeah.
Shoving a hypodermic needle.
But then again, that guy...
But at the same time, that guy broke into my house and spoke to my baby. I might burn down his house.
True. It's a swerve. It's no. I wanted to shout out the Don Callis family as a whole, Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher, Don Callis himself, very much in that range where I'm like, I got a feeling that maybe that could end up being my pick for this 2025 list, but there is somebody that I would rank higher than them. Another runner-up for me is Christian Cage, but I'm going to go Jon Moxley.
I'm also going Jon Moxley.
Come on.
Callum, you going to make it a trifecta?
I'm looking at my list, but I think he's probably the standout choice for me. But looking at some of the other ones, you got I thought Chris Statlander's heel turn was really well executed. I think she did a good job as a heel. Don Callis and Cole Fletcher, kind of a combo act. Fletcher turning on Ospreay in the way that he did. I think he's definitely high up there in terms of heels that are getting the most heat right now. Christian Cage always gets heel heat, and the Young Bucks as well. But yeah, Jon Moxley comes across as very... Again, it's similar in a way. His character is kind of very similar to Adam Page in the way that he's basically talking about wanting to do things for the greater good of pro wrestling or for AEW, but the way that he's going about it is very megalomaniac villain. Yeah. So yeah, I think that he stands out as the top guy.
It's a shame that we can't say the Elite.
Yeah, but they didn't deliver.
They didn't. You would think that at the beginning of the year when they're doing this whole angle and it's they beat up the owner of the company and all, and it's yeah, you're not even on the honorable mentions. Sorry, guys, Obviously, Babyface is the complete opposite of this. Fan favorites, heroes, that side of things. Same rules apply and all. Do you go with people at a worst babyface is somebody that you're supposed to cheer and you don't because you don't actually like them as a babyface, or do you just not like them as a character or whatever it might be? Is your top babyface somebody that you really do get behind and you're I want that person to win that championship, or is it somebody that you just really, really like as a character, whatever it might be? I had two written down for worst babyface that I if I went through this list again, maybe I would end up thinking of some other names, but did Danhausen do anything this year?
Nope.
I didn't think he did, so I had that down as a question mark, because I don't think he actually showed up.
I don't think he's done anything since World's End. I think he was on the pre-show of World's End.
But I had him down as a possibility without checking that information. And then I also had down the Hardy Boys for just being such a disappointment with how everything went with that. And, if I look at the roster right now, again, while you guys are going through, maybe I'll think of some other names. But that's what I had down before I go ahead and do that again.
I will not be going through anything. The only thing I need to say is, yo, listen. It's Max Caster. There, for all the reasons I've already said.
Yeah, I think that'll almost certainly be my pick as well, like Max Caster in general, just because of his
Because
just
Max
his
Caster in
irritants.
general.
Yeah, and he's just like the crowd have really badly turned on him, and it's just affected the overall mystique of the Acclaim. But other people that I had listed are Britt Baker. I think she just has a lot of she has a lot of heat attached to her now, and she's a babyface. But I think a lot of people are kind of sick of her, especially the way that she's come in and the whole thing with the nobody cares towards Serena Deeb. Like this is like it's not very helpful. In particular, Mercedes Moné, she was babyface for a while and was not very good at it. Sammy Guevara, because he's like they always try to make him a babyface, and he's always just going to fall short because people just don't like him.
I think this was one of his better years, though. They kept him out of the spotlight.
Yeah, and then Deonna Purrazzo, because I think it was not so much like she was a bad job as a babyface, just that people really didn't care about her in particular when she was feuding with Toni Storm. Like everyone was cheering Toni Storm instead. So yeah, I'll go with Max Caster though. Definitely worst babyface.
There are probably so many people on ROH too that if I watched that, I would end up saying that they would fit in the bill. Same as how when people do the WWE list, it's like, yeah, you can count people in NXT, and then people go, who the fuck is that? Whatever. But yeah, that's not a super standout other crew. I'm looking through it now. I'm like, I don't remember if anybody like Preston Vance was a babyface this year, or if anybody else that I can think of. But best baby faces, I have way more options for that, thankfully. I think I know who I'm going to go for, but I'm debating between 6 different people, so I'll toss out their names. Stop me if it's your pick and you want to go with them. Mark Briscoe is an option for me. I think he perpetually this year was a fun act and a guy that could get people riled up and really get behind. He feuded with people in a way that like you would want to see him beat those people. He's interesting on the mic. He checks a lot of boxes for me. I don't think I'm going to go with Mark Briscoe though. Swerve Strickland's a very strong option, but then we were just making fun of the fact that he was kind of a heel in some ways too.
To be fair, that was last year that he broke into a man's home, but still.
I always have Orange Cassidy towards the top of my list here. He's one of my major contenders for this. Might actually be my pick, but there is one other person I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards. I could see an argument for Will Ospreay, for sure. We already talked about him being great and all those things. Bryan Danielson is like, it's hard to argue against him.
He's the guy. It was his year. He is the face of this company in a lot of ways. He took up a lot of backstage roles in the last 12 months. He led the disciplinary committee. He openly says that he loves AEW and just wants to see it thrive. Bryan Danielson embodies we're the best wrestle. Bryan Danielson is one of the best baby faces of all time. He's so pure. Everything about Danielson screams babyface, especially this company Danielson and this year Danielson.
There is one other person though that I think takes it just a little bit more than he does though.
It's
Darby Allin.
That's not who I thought you were going to say.
You thought I was going to go Sting?
I thought you were going to go... Actually, I started to say Sting, and then I remembered Willow Nightingale exists, and she's just a wonderful human being who's just...
Well, it was great. If it was separating in the baby faces for men's and women's divisions...
Yeah, if it was male and female, I would have picked Willow for the best women's baby face.
Yeah.
But,
we're going to talk about her in a minute. But
Darby Allin is the heart and soul of AEW, but he also seems determined to stop his heart at all costs. So I don't think too much about him in terms of doing it for others.
Darby Allin's the guy championing the cause against the Death Riders. He was going up against the Elite. He had the whole thing with Sting. Like, he's been at the forefront of, like, top babyface this entire year.
Yeah, so my choices have pretty much all been mentioned. I think the only one that has been mentioned previously that I had listed down is Daniel Garcia.
I wish I could go with that, but I haven't been liking what they've been doing lately with him.
I like the whole, like, when going back to face MGF and the crowd reaction that he got at All In, and then the big response when he announced his re-signing, and like the whole fanfare surrounding him, and the fact that he finally won his title. I think there's a lot of, like, just organic love behind Daniel Garcia. But then all the other ones have been mentioned already, like Bryan Danielson, definitely super high up there. Darby Allin, Sting, Will Ospreay, and Willow Nightingale definitely as well as, like, the women's one. Like, she's just the ultimate babyface for the women's division. But I am going to go for Mark Briscoe. I think he's just the most affable, engaging, like, emotion driving babyface in the entire roster. Like, when he talks or when he does in the ring, I think it inspires a reaction from people that, like, other people do, but I think he does it in such a consistent basis. So yeah, I'll go with him.
I forgot to mention Parker Boudreaux, if he was a part of this year. He would also be on my heel, the worst heel list. I just, I'm looking through the roster again here. We just mentioned one of these names. I'm going to come back up in a moment, be here, but let's talk about the women's division specifically. The best and the worst female wrestler of the year. Just in general, it doesn't have to be heel or face, doesn't have to be anything other than just, you're in the women's division, you're in AEW, who's the best, who's the worst overall. And again, I could do a cop-out answer. I could do the whole thing about, like, the worst are people like Abaddon and Diamante and people that I haven't seen almost anything of this entire year. And if I did, I didn't enjoy it. A lot of those people maybe have been more in the Ring of Honor side, and maybe I'm missing some great stuff from somebody like a Diamante. Marina Shafir, she stood this year, and it's like, hey, that's better than what it was before, but that still is, like, not great. I haven't seen anything from Madison Rayne this year that I can remember. If I did, whatever, that, you know, it's a big list like that, but I don't want to do the cop-out answers. So to me, Saraya is my number 2 for the reasons I've always talked about. And you would think I would go Mercedes Moné, but that's not the case because Camille's there. And realistically, Camille just sucked more in a lot of ways. Like, Camille got brought in months before she actually showed up. So what were they waiting for? And they bring... What's that?
Mercedes Moné.
Well, even with Mercedes, they had her there and they didn't have Camille immediately. So if they were just waiting for that, then, you know, she should have been a part of the mix from the start. And then Camille does get brought in, and it's like, she's got the easiest thing you can possibly do when you're somebody who's taller or bigger or whatever. You get brought in as a bodyguard for a heel character. All you have to do is beat people up, look imposing, not suck in the ring, not suck on the mic, which you barely talk as it is as a bodyguard, and then eventually turn on them and beat them and, you know, do that thing. The whole story of Camille this year has been, wait. Yeah, there she is. That's not really all that great. Oh, we're going to do an injury angle? Hey, wait, they're going to break up already? Oh, thank God they're breaking up. Now can she not return? Holy shit, what a flop.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that assessment. So I'd say the ones I had listed in my honourable mentions for worst female wrestler, Deonna Purrazzo, just thoroughly underwhelmed with her performances over this year. And again, I know the booking is a lot of the issue as well. Just when given opportunities, I think she's flat to deceive. Britt Baker, again, I know it sounds harsh, and she was only really there for half the year, or not even half the year even, but the period that she has been back has been kind of filled with a lot of like issue and negativity surrounding her, both from her own like just general performances and just like the match quality as well. Abaddon, just because I think that pound for pound, she's probably the worst wrestler from the women's division right now. I just don't think that she has particularly good matches, and she's pretty much all gimmick at this point, and even that gimmick is a bit tired and doesn't have a lot of variety or scalability to it. So, but the choice is Camille, like just a complete bust of a signing, hasn't worked well with the Mercedes character, has had poor matches, seemingly has got very little stamina attached to her as well. So yeah, I think that if they were to cut bait with her and send her off to whoever's next for her, whether that's NXT or anywhere else, they wouldn't lose anything.
Any different picks or anything, Rob?
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize I was muted after you finished talking. I said, and I agree with you, because Camille just was terrible. And that's about all I have to add to that, because I've already said why I think she's awful.
And it's not too surprising to say this. Willow Nightingale is my best.
Ayo, let's go 2 for 2, baby. Willow Nightingale is so good. She's awesome. She's such a bubbly person. She like embodies the whole we're the best wrestler and all the positivity that AEW is supposed to bring. I hope Callum makes it 3 for 3.
Unfortunately, I cannot do that. Because Willow's definitely my second choice. But there's a few other, again, honorable mentions to Tony Storm. I know Tony Storm's character is very like polarizing, but I think that like when you are clearly definitively the company's top female star, then I think it should at least count for something. And Mina Shirakawa, who I think has come in and like felt right at home as part of the AEW brand as well. Again, I think that I'd like to see a bit more like the serious thing rather than just like constant boob shaking. That
I'd like to see a bit more. I thought you were going in that direction.
No. I've seen all that needs to be seen on that side of things, but just like to just expand her character a little bit more than just being like purely attached to the Mariah May story and yeah, the boob shaking stuff. But I'm going for the kind of the other half of the double act with Willow Nightingale's Chris Statlander as my choice for female wrestler of the year. I think she had excellent matches. I think the transition to the heel worked really well with Stokely Hathaway, and now she's back as a babyface with a different edge and feel to her than before. I thought that she had, like, obviously the excellent match with Nightingale, one of, if not the best women's match in W's history, and I also think that she had Mercedes is best match of the year as well. So yeah, shout out to her for having like just typically great matches and kind of going a little bit under the radar for how good she is.
Yeah, hard to disagree. I knew it would be one of those two, but Statlander's great. I wish she was still heel. But that being said, she did have the best match that AEW's ever had with women with Mercedes at Full Gear. So that counts for something.
Oh, I thought the best match they've had with women's thing was the Willow. So, but if you think the other thing, maybe she had two of like the greatest matches. She
definitely had two of the greatest women's matches in the company. Yeah.
I think some people would probably give a shout out on the worst side of things to maybe Britt Baker in some ways too. I didn't like in the ring necessarily, but like as like a problem for this year on that front.
I'm still giving a lot of leniency because apparently she was just out for health reasons, which is fine. But, let's see what happens next year with her.
And I could see people giving, if it's just like, as far as super fun, I could see people being like, oh, my favorite character in the women's division this year would have been like a Harley Cameron because she was a lot of fun this year. I can't give her like, best female wrestler, but I can be like, she was a lot of fun. So, male wrestler, same thing, just, men's division. Don't need to explain that. You throw in those Aaron Solo types of the people that I don't really know. He pops up as the first. He's AA, so it's always Aaron Solo plus whatever, and then I don't want to type out the rest of them.
But it's just so funny to me that you make sure to spend the 30 seconds to go, by the way, fuck him. Moving on.
Never met the guy, could be a fucking great human being and all that, but at the same time, can you tell me anything at all he's done in the 5 years of AEW that has been something to actually be like thumbs up for? There you go. Hardy Boys again for the mentions we talked about before. Zach Knight for what I mentioned before, but I don't know if this counts or not. Wardlow, maybe. This is the first year that I really just said there is no part of me that's going to try to argue against it.
I see the point. He's definitely out there. I wouldn't pick him just yet.
It was undermined as like a potential option, definitely. The ones I have listed under like the worst like men's wrestler of the year. Like, there's a lot of people that I was just like very disappointed with in terms of just overall this year. Looking at Adam Cole as someone who, again, injuries notwithstanding, but just everything that he's done since coming back, I've just not been a fan of. Jack Perry, definitely not the worst, but like not that I'm certainly someone that I'm on the lower end of nowadays. Wardlow's mentioned Zach Knight just for not being really good and being a bit of like a nepotism signing for Soraya's sake of things. This one that like they'll mention it at all, but like this is just weird. Scorpio Sky.
Yeah.
Like him coming back with that super weird like positivity, like motivational speaker gimmick thing, like a
and then he
like
never debuted.
Yeah, and then just never went anywhere with it. But I feel like he should probably just move on as well. Jeff Hardy for poor performances, Jake Hager for being a piece of shit. It was technically about
was he like did he do anything this year? I don't remember if he had actually participated this year. Hager, I mean.
Involved this year. He was involved this year, I think. I think he had some, at least a couple of matches, if not more. Let me have a look quickly just to see what his cage match says. Because if not, I'll just. But even though it's worth just saying that he was a piece of shit anyway. But
you can always say he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, his last matches were in on Rampage in February against Roderick Strong.
Well, then it counts.
Yeah, it counts him. Yeah,
and he was a babyface in those matches as well. Weirdly enough, that was like him just brought in for these matches against like Dark Order again and like Roderick Strong when he was still part of the Undisputed Kingdom. So
I like that hat. That's the best thing he ever did.
Yeah. And then what like the three cool ones are Jericho just for just being around too long and just being a bit of a blot on the progression of other people just because he just still has to be there and he's approaching his mid-50s. Jack Jameson, because like you need one focal point to represent for the entirety of the Iron Savages, but the worst in the rest of the year for me is Max Caster. I think again it's just one of those ones I think it's
the best wrestler alive, getting a lot of heat this year.
Yeah.
Yo,
I just think it'd be a net like in his current format and his current like approach. I think it would just be a net positive if he wasn't there anymore. And so I don't want to lose Joe. I want him to get better and I want him to change the act up a bit. But just in his current iteration, it's just really not working for me. And I don't think I'm far from alone in that belief.
I mean, yeah, for me it comes down to there's three options. There's Wardlow, there's Jericho, and there's Max Caster. Wardlow, I'm at the point where it's like, all right, that's got to be this company's greatest whiff in terms of a homegrown star so far. Jericho, as Callum pointed out, the act is long in the tooth. He's long in the tooth. he's also just not done anything of great significance. But Max Caster seems to enjoy upsetting people, and he's not even a heel. That's the part that pisses me off. He's one of those people who just enjoys like making people uncomfortable, or at least that's the bit he's putting out, and I don't want to see it. And he's not groundbreaking with anything he does. You know what I mean? Like Jericho, yeah. Is Jericho annoying? Yes. Is Jericho old? Yes. Has everything else that we've learned about Jericho kind of put a dampen on the on-screen character for some? Absolutely. He's still Chris Jericho. He can still deliver for the most part. Max Caster's not breaking the mold with anything he's doing. So I just don't. He's the worst.
And I'm looking through the roster page right now, like the actual AEW roster page, which doesn't get updated as frequently as smarkoutmoment.com, by the way. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so I forgot AR Fox was on the roster. Always forget about Arya Daivari as well. They do have Danhausen still listed on the roster.
Oh yeah, they do, and he is still employed.
Crazy. Thankfully, though, we have some best options, and they're the names that we've said a million times. So let's just say, all right, we got Bryan Danielson, we got Darby Allin, we got Orange Cassidy, Swerve Strickland, Will Ospreay, etc., etc., etc. Who you guys picking? I highly doubt anybody's going to be like, Evil Uno is the, just out of nowhere right now.
I mean, to me, it comes down to three choices. So I'm wondering, like if we were to split all three of them out, but like to me, I think there's three people that defined, arguably four, if you would extend it out to. So the four ones I think that are the big standout ones are Will Ospreay, Bryan Danielson, Swerve Strickland, and Hangman Page. I kind of think that they're the four kind of big stars of this year in terms of just most captivating characters of the year, as well as like best matches, best promos, just everything, kind of a lot of them associated with it. While obviously Bryan Danielson had his retirement tour, and it was just a privilege to see him have his one of his final matches as a full-time guy, All In. It was just, and see him win the world title. Like, I still don't think that overall it was. I think there were other people that stood at the top of it, but I'm not going to go with Hangman Page primarily because like he was out for a chunk of time as well, for about like 3 or 4 months, so he wasn't there consistently throughout the year. Will Ospreay had amazing matches up and down the theme, like ingratiated himself into AEW like a duck to water, and it's just been like a perfect signing for the company, and I'm sure there's plenty more to come next year, but I think this year was the year of Swerve Strickland, like going and fully cementing himself as world champion, main event star, like a player for the company, a true like star that the company can lean itself on for the foreseeable future. I think this was Swerve's year.
Listen, I respect that. I think you're right in some respects. But I also think that while this was the year that Swerve proved himself as a commodity in wrestling and someone who can always be near the top, I look at it like this. Swerve didn't do what Ospreay did for this company. Ospreay is the embodiment of the AEW mindset and style. And this year, they really got their guy. This guy, if he became AEW champion during that match with Swerve at Forbidden Door, I wouldn't have cared that it was, 2 months into Swerve's reign, or that it was 2 months into his time with the company, honestly. Like, he gets it. He is it for this company. And I think it's Will Ospreay's year.
I think if Darby Allin would have won the championship this year, I would have probably said that takes him into that extra little bit of a notch forward for me. And I think if Danielson had wrestled a little bit more, I'd give it to him. But I think I'm going to have to go Ospreay as well. And again, shout out to like John Moxley, major part of this year. Or like, we saw some great stuff from. Well, we mentioned all of them already. We have to go down the whole thing again. But I'm going to go Ospreay on that front. And I got a feeling that we're going to be bringing his name up quite a bit again when it comes to the 2025 awards. But the last thing we need to do here for the AEW front is to just group those together. The men and the women overall, who is the best and who is the worst wrestler of the year. Worst, I could say the Indifference Collective of all these people, the Aaron Solos. I had to toss it out there one more time. Saraya, Wardlow, all those things. I could toss Mercedes Moné out there, but again, I didn't get for the worst female, so I don't want to go on that front. I think since Wardlow was missing for the majority of this year, if not the entire year, if I remember correctly, that I can't quite give it to him. So I think I actually kind of maybe have to go Saraya on this front, because she does pop up, and when she does pop up, I don't like what she does. But Camille is another option for this too, so that's kind of tough too.
Look, Camille's my option. Again, someone who I loved her work in the NWA. I was a fan, and I would still be a fan if she was delivering. She's not, so it's Camille for me.
Bringing up that tweet again.
Yeah, there's also that. That is also an issue.
Intrusive thoughts came out.
Oh God, Callum, who you go?
Yeah, so obviously between my worst male and female ones with like Max Caster and Camille, I could at least give in Max Caster's credit both the his and other people's performance in the Blood and Guts match, which that was a good match, and also I think that they did have some good matches. The Acclaim did, including the match at All In, which I thought over-delivered considering the general apathy that I think a lot of people entered a triple threat tag match with. So there are some positives when it came to Caster and the Acclaimed this year, but I don't think there's really anything generally positive you can say about Camille's run in AEW this year. So I think that she has to be the worst.
And then on the best side of things, I'm just going to cut to the chase. I'm going to go Ospreay.
I'm elevated right to the sky. Ospreay.
Yep, and obviously I'll go with my male wrestler as well as Chris Statlander did. I think Swerve was just the dominant force for this year, from my perspective.
All right, everybody. Well, that rounds out the AEW End of the Year Awards. Performer side of things, as well as obviously we already did the writing awards, we already did the technical skills awards. The option for you to agree or disagree is always out there. Maybe you have a really strong case to mention some people that we forgot about. Maybe you just think we're flat out wrong. You can disagree. It's perfectly fine. And keep in mind that if we have something up on Discord or whatever like that, you can just keep track of this stuff throughout the year if you want to too. That's not going to bother me. If we continue to have the same things going on for 2025, we'll see what the differences are for the people that we really liked this year that ended up continuing to do even better things, or the people that did, fell off a little bit. I looked at my 2023 end of the year awards before, and it's interesting how many people do stick around quite the same and how many people do change. I had down under my worst wrestler of the year for last year, I had Danhausen, Matt Hardy, who are 60% of these people, and I gave it to Trench, who wasn't even a part of the roster this year.
Nice.
My best last year, I gave it to a tie between MJF and Christian. And I had Bryan Danielson and Orange Cassidy as runner-ups because Ospreay and all them, they didn't make that as big of a splash. So you never know who's going to really jump up on that too. And then I had given Willow Nightingale the best female wrestler last year. I gave her the same this year. So some things do stay exactly the way that they are. And, anything can happen. 2024 has proven that for sure. So I guess we got to strap ourselves in and see what happens in 2025. But make sure that you leave your comments below. Make sure that you hit the like button on this video. Check that you are subscribed. Ring the notification bell. Click on the join button if you want to get access to the same stuff as the Patreon, like the Darkcast tier or the Pick Your Poison tier, or you just want to help us out with the monetary incentives of $1 and up. Redbubble and TeePublic, you can pick up your merchandise for not only Smark Out Moment, but also A Mango Tees or Fanboys Anonymous. If you don't know what Fanboys Anonymous is, go to fanboysanonymous.com. It's pretty simple. And make sure that you are checking out everything on the link tree at amangotree.com. Follow us on all those different platforms. Follow me at Tony Mango and follow Robin Callum.
Yep, follow me at DeFelice. Check out my work on Fightful.com. And hopefully we see you in 2025. Callum?
So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Wigmost14. Check out the Power Rankings every Saturday on the Smark Out website, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their prior week's performances. And then you can also check out the Fantasy League, also at www.fantasyleague.com, to see how our teams are performing, how our rosters are doing, who's picking up points as we head towards the Royal Rumble, and then from that point on to WrestleMania, where we'll crown our season winner.
Okie dokie, everyone. Pass along to the next section here. It's going to be at least the next recording we're going to do. I don't know when you're listening to this and how you bounce around, but we still have the WWE performers to record. So if you are listening to this in chronological order, that is next for you. And we'll see you then. If not, we'll see you on, I guess, the hot tags would be the next thing. So stay tuned for that. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we're being counted out.